Lawrence Russell Brewer. He was the white supremacist who ordered a feast fit for a king, and then, in a final act of contempt, destroyed a century-old tradition. This story begins with an act of unimaginable cruelty. In 1998, Lawrence Russell Brewer and two others chained a black man, James Byrd Jr., to the back of their pickup truck and dragged him for 3 miles down an asphalt road. It was a crime so hateful, so monstrous, it shocked the conscience of a nation. For this, Brewer was sentenced to die, and in 2011, when the state of Texas asked for his last meal request, he decided to perform one final act of theater, one last spit in the face of the system. He requested a banquet, a monument to gluttony. 2 chicken fried steaks with gravy and sliced onions, a triple meat bacon cheeseburger, a cheese omelet with ground beef, tomatoes, onions, and jalapenos, a large bowl of fried okra with ketchup, a pound of barbecue, a half loaf of white bread, 3 fajitas, a meat lover's pizza, a pint of Bluebell ice cream, a slab of peanut butter fudge, and 3 root beers. The prison kitchen dutifully prepared it all. They laid out this massive, artery-clogging feast before him, and when the guards presented it, Brewer looked at the mountain of food and refused to eat a single bite. He told them he wasn't hungry. This was not a protest. This was pure, unadulterated spite. It was a final calculated gesture of contempt for the very system that was about to grant him his last wish. The act so enraged Texas lawmakers that just days later, the state abolished the practice of last meal requests for all condemned inmates. Brewer's final act of defiance wasn't just a personal statement. He single-handedly ended a tradition that had stood for nearly 100 years, ensuring that every inmate who came after him would be denied that one small final choice. Timothy McVeigh. He was the domestic terrorist who killed 168 people, and his last meal was a pint of mint chocolate chip ice cream. This one is chilling in its simplicity. Timothy McVeigh was not a monster who hid in the shadows. He was a man who looked at the federal government and saw an enemy so absolute, he declared a one-man war. On April 19, 1995, he detonated a truck bomb outside the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City. The blast ripped the face off the building, killing 168 people, including 19 children in a daycare center. It was at the time the deadliest act of domestic terrorism in American history. McVeigh was not insane. He was not remorseful. He was a soldier in his own mind, a man who saw his actions as a necessary strike against a tyrannical regime. He was captured, convicted, and sentenced to death, and throughout it all, he remained cold, defiant, and utterly unrepentant. He referred to the children he killed as collateral damage. When it came time for his final meal before his execution in 2001, he didn't request an elaborate feast. He didn't make a grand political statement. He made a request so simple, so mundane, so childish that it is almost impossible to reconcile with the scale of his crime. He asked for 2 pints of mint chocolate chip ice cream. That's it. No steak, no burger, just a cold, sweet, almost innocent treat. What do you even do with that? What does it mean? Was it a final contemptuous joke? A symbol of a lost, innocent childhood that he himself had destroyed for so many others? Or was it something even more terrifying? Was it the choice of a man so detached, so emotionally hollowed out, that his final desire was nothing more than a simple, uncomplicated sensory pleasure? The image is just wrong. A man who had brought so much fire and fury into the world, who had shattered so many lives, choosing to end his own with the quiet, cool taste of mint and chocolate. It is the banality of evil, served in a paper cup, a final, baffling, and deeply disturbing postscript to a national tragedy. Dennis Bagwell. He was the death row inmate who requested a final meal that was a joyous celebration of family, community, and everything he had personally destroyed. This one begins with an ironic contrast. Picture a classic down-home Texas feast, a plate groaning under the weight of life's simple pleasures, a well-done steak, a pile of fried chicken, a rack of saucy barbecue ribs, crispy French fries, onion rings, fried bacon, a mountain of salad with ranch dressing, peach cobbler for dessert. It is the meal of a Sunday afternoon barbecue, a family reunion, a 4th of July picnic. It is a meal that tastes like home. And the man who ordered it, Dennis Bagwell, was executed in 2005 for systematically slaughtering his own. This wasn't a crime of passion. It wasn't a robbery gone wrong. This was familicide. In 1995, Bagwell broke into his mother's home and one by one murdered his entire family. He shot his mother, Leona, 4 times. He beat and stabbed his father, Bill. He did the same to his 19-year-old sister, Tassie. And then he went after his 4-year-old niece, Libby. He hunted her down as she tried to hide. It was an act of intimate, personal annihilation. A man turning on his own blood and erasing them from existence. And then, 10 years later, for his final meal, he requests a feast, the kind of meal you share, the kind of meal that fills a house with laughter and conversation. What does that mean? What goes through the mind of a man who murders his family and then asks to taste the very food that symbolizes the life he stole from them? Was it a final twisted act of remembrance? A moment of profound pathological denial where he could pretend, just for a moment, that he was just a regular guy sitting down to a family dinner? Or was it something worse? Was it a mockery? A final gluttonous celebration of the life he chose to end? The meal itself wasn't disturbing, but the context makes it a feast of ghosts. Ted Bundy. He was the charming, handsome, and utterly soulless serial killer who, in the end, didn't even care enough to choose his own last meal. This is not a story about a bizarre request. It's a story about a chilling void. Ted Bundy was not a monster who looked like a monster. He was the boy next door. He was handsome, intelligent, charismatic. He worked in politics. He volunteered at a suicide hotline, talking people out of ending their lives, all while he was brutally ending the lives of dozens of young women across the country. He was the ultimate predator, a wolf who had perfected the sheep's clothing. He was a master manipulator, a narcissist of almost cosmic proportions. He escaped from custody twice. He acted as his own attorney during his trial, a theatrical, preening performance that turned the courtroom into a stage for his own ego. He was a creature of pure, performative evil, a man who seemed to relish the attention his crimes brought him. So, when it came time for his last meal, before his execution in Florida's electric chair in 1989, the world watched. What final, grand, narcissistic statement would he make? What carefully chosen meal would he use to send one last cryptic message? And his choice was to make no choice at all. Bundy declined a special meal, so by Florida state prison regulations, he was given the standard, default last meal: a medium-rare steak, eggs over easy, hash browns, toast with butter and jelly, milk and coffee. A breakfast. The most normal, most mundane, most utterly generic American breakfast imaginable. And he didn't touch it. He refused to eat. He was led to the electric chair, having made no request and having eaten no final meal. And that, in its own way, is the most terrifying choice of all. It was the ultimate act of nihilistic contempt, a final, silent declaration that none of it mattered. Not the lives he took, not the grief he caused, not the ritual of his own state-sanctioned death. It was a choice of a man so empty, so devoid of any recognizable human emotion, that even the final, personal act of choosing a meal was beneath him. It was a shrug, a void, a final, silent testament to the absolute nothingness at his core. Robert Dale Conklin. He was the murderer who ordered a final meal so decadent, so absurdly luxurious, it was a final gourmet insult to the life he had so brutally dismembered. This story begins with a crime of pure, abject horror. In 1984, Robert Dale Conklin, a 24-year-old lawyer, gets into an argument with his lover, George Crooks. He kills him. But it doesn't end there. He then takes the body and, with a horrifying surgical precision, dismembers it. It's a crime of intimate, hands-on brutality, a complete and total desecration of a human being. For this, Conklin was sentenced to death in Georgia. For over 2 decades, he sat on death row, and when his time finally came in 2005, he was asked for his final meal request. And his request was not of simple comfort or quiet nostalgia. It was a statement, an act of defiant, almost aristocratic decadence. He requested a filet mignon wrapped in bacon, a deveined shrimp sautéed in garlic butter with lemon, a baked potato with butter, sour cream, chives, and bacon bits, asparagus with hollandaise sauce, corn on the cob, a side of French bread with butter, goat cheese, a slice of cantaloupe, and for dessert, a pint of vanilla bean ice cream. This wasn't a meal. This was a Michelin-starred event, a final, defiant performance of a man pretending to be a connoisseur, a gentleman of refined taste. The contrast is just staggering. A man whose final act of passion was to reduce a human body to its component parts, now fastidiously requesting that his shrimp be deveined and his asparagus be napped in a perfectly executed hollandaise. It is a level of cognitive dissonance that is almost breathtaking. This meal is often cited as one of the most expensive and elaborate last meals ever requested. It was a final theatrical performance of a man pretending to be civilized, a man of taste and discernment. It was a gourmet meal chosen to be digested by a body that in just a few hours would be rendered lifeless by the state. A final, fleeting taste of luxury before being sent into the void. It was a Last Supper that was less about sustenance and more about style.